Buy on MTG. Construct your deck. Command your board. Conquer the table.
Hello out there in the wide world of web. This is Rob with Buy on MTG. Been a minute since I've done any kind of a deck tech video, and that's because I've been doing schooling for lighting and trying to get this cinematic approach to having the offset lighting and maybe a little bit better sound quality. And at the end of the day, the camera and video quality is still limited to the equipment that I actually have. Nonetheless, we're going to do this deck tech video, and this is on the Abzan Armor deck. That's this pre-con that I've sleeved up and been playing and done a fair amount of reps to, and have done a few iterations. I always bring this up just so you can look at Architect, and you can actually search by the pre-con specifically. So if you wanted to start out with this pre-con, it says it's a bracket 3, and that is because of the Seedborn Muse. But then if you want to put it into your actual catalog, you can hit clone deck and go through the process and allow it to be saved into your decks and update and modify accordingly. So the three main things that I was looking at with this deck and this commander specifically, I don't know if I can just zoom in on him and bring him up. Yeah, there we go. Each of your creatures, each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. So that's something that I want to keep consistent throughout the most of the deck, at least the theme portion. Creatures you control can attack as though they didn't have defender. Also pretty important for the theme of the deck. And then he's got my favorite lines in Magic is draw cards or draw a card. So I was pretty drawn to him because I used to have a Walls deck back in the day, and I ran the Abzan Walls. And then when they gave us the Bant Commander, I ran the Bant Walls. And man, I'm telling you, that Bant Walls deck is hard pressed to be matched. But this one is pretty strong. I've been very happy with it. But looking at the main things in Magic cards that I wanted for this deck, we're just going to say I needed defenders because that's more or less the basic theme of the deck. I want additional enablers to allow my defenders to attack as though they didn't have defender, and creatures to assign combat damage accordingly. So we're going to go ahead and zoom this back out. And I bring up Scryfall is going to be the first thing that I pop up here. And looking at it, I look up Abzan, so white, black, green, in paper, only commander legal, and then under Oracle or O:defender. So that brings up every possible defender or any card that makes defenders or something that has to do, or really just in its Oracle text says defender. So I'll go through this and look at things, and then I'll find like, oh, look, there's Felothar. He's in there because that's what he does, is he deals with defenders. But I find cards like Flump, not in the pre-con, but Flying Defender. Whenever Flump is dealt combat damage, you and target opponent each draw a card. Well, I like drawing cards, so this is probably going to make the cut. It's a 0/4, so the assigning combat damage with toughness is important, and it can attack even though it has defender because of the commander. And then the commander's activated ability, 3 and tap, sacrifice another creature. Draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness, so draw 4. And then discard cards equal to its power, so discard 0. So stuff like this is how I find my round 1 of what I'm looking for. And it's got next 60 on there, but let's go back to the top. There are 202 cards that reference defender that are commander legal within the Abzan color. Something else that I was looking at is I wanted cards that allowed it to attack, and this Oracle didn't have defender. So it more or less allows it to do things as though it didn't have defender. And searching the same parameters, commander, legal and paper, and Abzan, and there were 27 cards that let you do things as though you didn't have Defender. And of course, we see Felothar here again. So going through this, it allowed me to find additional cards. And you'll be surprised, like this Walking Bulwark and this Weathered Sentinels, that was just in the pre-con. So similar to Assault Formation. So you'll find that this deck, even straight out of the box, was pretty good, and it had a lot of the enablers in it. The next thing that he did is assigns toughness, or damage from toughness rather than power. So, of course, my search parameters in Scryfall, I wanted my Abzan Commander, I wanted a legal, and then Oracle, quote, assigns combat damage equal to, and end quote, and then Oracle, toughness rather than. Now, there's different ways you could word this, but it brought up additional cards that weren't in the this category, but it gave me a little bit more things to work with, like this Bedrock Tortoise, to be as an example. And it's an 06, so it falls right in line. It doesn't have Defender, but each creature you control with toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. And really cool thing in here is, as long as it's your turn, creatures you control have hexproof. I did notice and added a couple things, but there is a very high density of things that give you hexproof. So I thought that was kind of cool to give a sub-protection theme. So that brings us to the actual deck list that I have been working. Let me zoom in and click on this one. There we go. This is my deck list. It's 100 cards. It's legal. The estimated cost after the upgrades to it puts me to $450. So if you've watched any of my deck techs before, I don't do budget deck techs. I give more or less how I would build it. And honestly, that's exactly what's sitting in this box. How I build it and try to maintain as powerful of a deck as I can build without involving game changers. That's why it still comes up as a Commander Bracket 2 core. This deck honestly plays very strongly alongside 3s, so this would probably be a 3, but I don't mess with that. I just leave it as is. So it is what it is. Let me go ahead and click. The commander itself, we've already gone through Felothar. And if I sort this to types, it will break up. I run 8 artifacts, a total of 32 creatures, 3 enchantments, 11 instants, 36 lands, 37 with MDFCs. And I'll get to why I run only 36, and 9 sorceries. This maybe board coming up. The first off is this Big Butt Turtle from Final Fantasy. It's an 8/20, which is ridiculous. It's an 8-drop, so it's a lot. So I am not 100% sure this is actually going to go in the deck. But as Vigilance Ward 3, damage isn't removed from this creature during cleanup steps. All damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control is dealt to this creature instead. And what's crazy, when this creature dies, exile it, then create 10 tapped treasure tokens. That's nuts. The other 2 cards in this maybe board presented themselves when I was doing the planning for this deck tech video. And I'll get into how I missed these and, how I missed them is I just overlooked them, but more or less how I found them. And the remove category, and this will be in my links in the description, but these are the 27 or 47 cards from the pre-con that I actually pulled out, and it's a huge list, but you build the decks how you like. And if I like to protect my cards more often than the average player, and that just yields to my play style. I like a very specific ramp package. I don't like signets, even though I think they're good enough to play. If I'm given the opportunity, I'm going to run talismans over signets, and that's more or less how these 47 cards came out. So let me go back, and I'm going to put them back to the categories. And I'm going to start out with board wipes. I run a total of 3 board wipes. I had 4 previously, but I've kind of shuffled around a little bit. Like I had Fell the Mighty, which is great in here, but I found myself having too many board wipes and didn't really need that many. Toxic Deluge or Deluge, however you want to say it, uh, ends up being a one-sided board wipe a lot of the time because most of my creatures have bigger butts than most of my opponent's stuff. And Toxic Deluge ends up being more so my catch-all for the token strategy. So I can only push one or two into here and it'll clean up most of the tokens, and that's usually more than enough. This Slaughter the Strong is hilarious, and I had never seen it prior to this pre-con. I'm not going to lie, I could look up and see if it existed prior to the pre-con, but I don't know. Each player chooses any number of creatures they control with total power, 4 or less, and then sacrifices all the other creatures. It does great against big go wide strategies. It goes great against token strategies, but it also goes great against anybody with big, tall creatures. And man, this rarely touches me because most of my creatures are just like the commander, 0 power. And Expel the Interlopers is a choose between 0 and 10, destroy all creatures with power greater than. It gives you that utility where if I happen to have that Welcoming Vampire out and I want to keep it, then I can pick 2, but depending on the board state, it allows me to kind of tailor that utility. To fall back to the Slaughter the Strong, it is a sacrifice, so it gets around all the indestructible stuff, which I think is amazing. Draw, you're going to see I only have 8 in here, and that's true, but it's not true because within the theme, there's a ton of walls that say draw a card when they come into play. And so, although there's only 8 in this category, there's substantially more draw. Beast Whisperer draws you a card anytime you cast a creature spell, not when it resolves or enters the battlefield, but anytime you cast. There's Beltor. This is the alternate Beltor. This is the one that came in the pre-con, and this is the other one from the pack, 5/7, so its butt's bigger than its power, but it not only draws you a card anytime you have more than 10 toughness, if you have more than 20 toughness, that untaps all your creatures, and then if you have more than 40 toughness, that loses, each opponent loses half their lives rounded up. I've never had that trigger. I've had more than 40 toughness countless times, but when this is in play and I don't have an answer to its removal, it eats removal if I have more than 40 toughness. So never seen it happen, but it would be pretty amazing the day that it does. Black Market Connection. For me, this is 3 mana. Every upkeep, I spend 3 life because I make a treasure and I draw a card. I've never spent 3 life on the colorless shapeshifter. So, I mean, it's a utility. You could do it, but I've never actually done it. To me, it's not worth it. Even more so in this deck because its power is bigger than its toughness. So, the 3 life is not something I'm doing in here. Flump, as I mentioned earlier, when I found him through the toughness thing, he definitely makes the cut. 2 mana for an 0/4 flying defender, so he gives you a little bit of blocker in the air. And anytime damage is dealt to him, myself, and I can always pick whoever has the like, that's how you make the friends, or you do that little bit of group hug in the game. Somebody's usually on their back foot, and you can tend to help them out. And I try to use it as a bartering chip. If I give you the card this time, are you going to do X or Y? And sometimes nobody's willing to barter with you. In my group, usually nobody's willing to barter with me. But if somebody's on the back foot, you can normally help somebody out. Guardian Project, just an amazing card. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another card in your graveyard, you draw a card. So it's more or less, in this deck, it's a virtual another Beast Whisperer, but doesn't eat removal, which is amazing. Orin Frostfang, probably the best card in the deck. 5 mana, attacking creatures you control have Death Touch, which is just amazing because it makes blocking a nightmare for your opponents. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, which is also amazing because, hey, drawing a card, and sometimes you're attacking 3 or 4 creatures, so you get to draw 3 or 4 cards. And lastly, in this deck specifically, it's a 2/6. So its butt is way bigger than its punch. So it deals damage equal to the 6. So it's a lot more powerful than you would think. And in a pinch, if I need to draw cards or it's about to eat removal, then I sack it. I draw 6 and discard 2. It's a great card. Trouble in Pairs was on the Game Changer. I didn't believe it should have been a Game Changer. And lo and behold, it came off of the Game Changer list. 4 mana. If an opponent would begin an extra turn, they skip that turn instead, which is doesn't happen often, but it's pretty great. Here's the cool part about it. Whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 or more creatures, draw a card. Whenever they draw their second card each turn, draw a card. Whenever they cast their second spell, draw a card. It's just amazing. This thing will draw you so many cards. It's ridiculous. And it's powerful. I don't believe it's Game Changer powerful, but, and fortunately for me, Wizards of the Coast agreed. Welcoming Vampire. Whenever one or more creatures you control with power 2 or less, which is a majority of this deck, enters, draw a card. You can only do it once each turn, which is great. I mean, it draws you an extra card. The mana base, you can look through here and contrast it to what I've removed. Things I've removed enter the battlefield tapped a majority of the time. Like if we go down to all of these temples, enter tap, scries, enter tap, scry, enter tap, do this and that. I don't like lands that enter tapped, so traditionally I will pull anything that says it enters tapped, excluding things like the triomes, and I'll replace them with things that don't enter tapped. And that's how I came to this this specific land package. And when I get to why I've streamlined it down to 36, we'll talk about it in ramp and in theme. But it's only 36, 37 with an MDFC. Protection package. Now this is more a thing that I lean into a lot more often than other players. Like I'm a super fan of Clever Concealment. I'm a big fan of Flawless Maneuver. Big fan of Heroic Intervention. I just love cards that when somebody board wipes or if somebody goes to remove something of mine that is an integral game piece, I can say no without being blue and without running the counter spells. Something else that presented itself a lot throughout this was the hexproof aspect. And I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about additional cards, but so we're looking at Shalai. You, planeswalkers you control, and other creatures you control have hexproof. It's a 4/3. It's a flyer. Its butt's a little bit bigger, so it ends up doing a little bit more damage than normal Shalai, but just protecting my creatures. I don't run any planeswalkers in here, so that portion is irrelevant. And myself, so edict effects can't hit me. At least targeted edict effects can't hit me. This hexproof popped up a few times. Another wall that was recently printed, Crystal Barricade, 2 mana for an 0/4 defender, so right on theme. You have hexproof. Crazy. Prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to you or dealt to other creatures you control. So a lot of Red's board wipes like Blasphemous Act and things like that are very damage dependent. And this just says, yeah, no thanks. I don't want that. So it weirdly enough just gives you another layer of hexproof. So it protects me against edict effects and it protects all of my creatures, excluding the Crystal Barricade, from burn damage, essentially. This Bedrock Tortoise is the one that I mentioned earlier. As long as it's your turn, creatures you control have hexproof. And this is another redundancy to the toughness. Chroma's Will is just an amazing card. It, to me, is 4 mana win the game if that board state is already established. So if I already have my commander and I already have a bunch of creatures out, giving my creatures flying, vigilance, and double strike can close a game out a lot of the time. And if the commander's out, giving my creatures a lifelink, indestructible, and protection from all colors is just disgusting. In a pinch, it can protect me from a board wipe. In a pinch, if I'm really low on life and somebody swings at me to knock me out, I can Chroma's Will and protect my creatures or if I'm low and I know I'm the hard target, I can gain a bunch of life with a Chroma's Will, or use it as a close the game out. These are all really good cards to protect your board wipe. Clever Concealment can be cast with essentially 0 mana. And I know there's not a lot of vigilance in this deck, but I have had Felothar be out with the 20 toughness, so my creature's untapped, which more or less just enabled Clever Concealment. Additionally, a ton of mana, because you would be surprised once we get to ramp and then over to the theme side, there's a ton of mana dorks that are also defenders. Going over to ramp, 0/3 reach, lets you play an extra land from your hand. Arboreal Grazer is a really good card. Signet, some mana rocks. I ended up jamming in Decanter and Thought Vessel, because I was drawing so many cards with this silly deck. I was discarding a ton, even with the amount of ramp. And I completely spaced and forgot the Reliquary Tower. And that's why when I started preparing for this video, I ended up ordering one, because I think a third piece of redundancy to have no maximum hand size is certainly not a bad thing. I've never had strong mana issues with this. And when we get down below, I'll show you, I could probably comfortably cut a forest for a Reliquary Tower and be just fine. Febrile Elder. It's a great card. I think I might end up cutting Febrile Elder for the Reliquary Tower, just because it's good. It taps for a few mana, but it doesn't fit the remainder of the theme because it's a 3/3, so it doesn't allow me to draw additional cards in the pinch of the Felothar activation. But it's good. I don't have any qualms with the card, but it's not super on theme, so it might get cut because I do have a ton of ramp in this deck. Fecund Shell, Green Shell. It's reach, so it lets me block some flyers. It's a 4/6, so its butt's a little bit bigger. As long as you control 10 or more lands, creatures you control get +2/+2. Yes, their power is bigger, but yes, their butt is bigger. So if I sacrifice, I draw 2 additional cards, and then I get to discard 2 additional cards, which essentially is not card draw, but more card selection. Whenever Fecund or another creature you control with toughness greater than its power enters, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, I put it onto the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, put it in your hand. So would I put this in ramp? Yes. Would I put it into draw? Yes. It goes in either position because the whole deck allows the draw. The whole deck would allow the ramp. So it could be in either side. And anybody who's a good deck builder knows redundancy in your card selection is what takes a good deck and makes it into a great deck. More mana or rocks, Fellward Stone, because it's a 3-color. I can usually use it for something. Nature's Lore and 3 visits are just redundancy in it. Majority of the time, it essentially lets me get whatever color that I actually need. If I need to grab a shock, I can grab a shock. But the first one, I normally blow on a tri-land, and then I just have perfect mana for the rest of the game. Soul Ring, great card. To me, it's an auto-include in pretty much everything, and I don't believe there's a lot of debate with that. The Talismans, I put Talismans over Signets, like I mentioned, and Thought Vessel, just another method to have no maximum hand size. The Recursion package in this deck, there ended up just being a small Recursion package, and I just kind of bolstered it with 1 additional card with the Balagad Recovery, which is a land in a pinch, so you don't miss your land drop. And I will say that is something as a Magic player that's really hard for me to do, is this to be my 4th land. But at the end of the day, you're not going to miss your land drops. You play this as your 4th land. If you draw a land and you get to keep it as a spell, awesome. But if you don't draw the land and this is the only land in your hand, don't miss your land drop. Play this stupid thing and just move on in your life. It's not that big of a deal. Missing a land drop is. Felothar is pretty cool. Flying lifelink at the beginning of your end step, put a number of +1 counters on another target creature equal to the number of life that you gain this turn. Then return up to 1 creature. There's not a ton of lifelink in this deck, but there's a pretty good amount of lifelink in this deck. And it ends up just kind of having this weird sub-theme that lets you draw. Like Dragalord Dramoka has lifelink. Felothar has lifelink. There's a handful of things in here that have lifelink that just happen to give you a little bit more life and happen to trigger Felothar and bring back, even if you only gain 2, you're getting back a wall. You're getting back these crazy good creatures because 2 mana, you're essentially getting back a 4/4 that draws you another card and probably will trigger your Guardian Project and draw you another card and potentially gains you another life off of the Welcoming Vampire. It's weird how many synergies just happen to synchronize in this deck. As a pre-con, it's a pretty well-built deck. And like I said, just kind of bolstering it. Well, not kind of bolstering it. Bolstering it with 46 swaps is a lot. But this deck definitely punches above its core bracket 2 weight by quite a bit. This card has won me a game on multiple instances. Reunion of the House, 7 mana. So it's 7 mana. It should win you the game. But return any number of target creatures you control with power 10 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. Then you exile this spell. I've been fortunate enough to late game, the game was going forever, cast Slaughter the Strong. Everybody sacrifices pretty much everything. And then I follow it up with a Reunion of the House. And that'll close the game out. If you have a haste enabler, but more so just like, okay, you have 1 turn to answer this. And if you can't, that's game. Because when Reunion of the House hits, it re-triggers every ETB, like across the entirety of the board, draws you a ton of cards, brings back your entire graveyard. It's just disgusting. And then we have one of the newer cards from this cycle, the Will of the Abzan. It's 4 mana. Choose one, and if you control your commander, you could choose both. Any number of target opponents, each sacrifice a creature with the greatest power that player controls, and then they lose 3 life. So obviously you're going to choose 3. If you've already been group hugging that one person and they're just falling way behind, and it's the one you've been given the flump cards to, so you have a battle buddy in this game, you could skip them, but I've never skipped them. And then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Just disgusting. It's such a great card. We're going to go into the removal package next. Removal wise, there's nothing that's like a big surprise here. Anything that can say destroys a permanent is just the best removal. So that's why it's Assassin Trophy, destroys a permanent, Beast Within, destroys a permanent, Generous Gift. It lets you deal with problematic lands without running straight land destruction. I will say, if your play group does have a lot of high-powered lands, go ahead and swap a land or 2 and run a Strip Mine, run a Wasteland, run a Ghost Quarters if you're in a budget build, but we don't normally have that many problematic lands in my play group, but if we did, I would offset these 3 destroy target permanent with another land destruction. Despark was in the pre-con. Exile target permanent with mana value 4 or greater. I will say I'm not a super fan of this card. It's done the thing. I've killed Atraxa with it, and that alone, killing an Atraxa in a Infect deck makes you feel good. But I've had issues with it before where it didn't answer the target that I actually wanted. So I think if I find or I stumble upon another good removal that is exile specific, so that way I can get rid of things that just are for graveyard recursion decks or indestructibles in your play group, I would probably swap this. Maybe I drop that and I bring back the Anguished Unmaking, which came in the pre-con, because that allows me to get non-land permanents so I can kill planeswalkers with it. So maybe in a pinch, I drop D-Spark and I put Anguish Sunmaking right back. Let's go ahead and do that now, just because, I don't know. I like making those decisions out loud sometimes. Feed the Swarm, great card. Destroy a creature or an enchantment. You lose life equal to its mana value. I do have a couple things that you pay life for. Now, Anguish Sunmaking, Feed the Swarm, Toxic Deluge. But like I said earlier, there is a little bit of life gain, so it offsets it a little bit. Path and Swords, just disgustingly powerful cards. I've used Path to ramp myself, so that's the top secret mode with it. I've used Swords to keep myself from being blown out, because a lot of the time, if it's the end of the game and people are swinging for Xaxes because you can kill them on the crackback, sometimes Swords can save you. Not as often in this deck because it's power-based and most of my creatures are zeros, but we do have some things that do have a power to them. And this Baitor, I've had creatures that have 14 power before in this deck. So Swords can do a little bit of heavy lifting. Getting into the theme, specific cards, I've covered a lot of them throughout just for redundancy purposes, but we're going to go through this. 2/4, Mana Dork, taps for 1 mana, or tap, add X of any one color where X is the greatest toughness. So this thing taps for 7. This being in the theme, it's a 2/4. It's also ramp. That's why I felt comfortable with going down to the 37. Even though I have a ton of ramp over here, there's still ramp in the theme specifically. Big butts matter. Axebane Guardian, Defender. It's on theme. It's an 0/3, and it taps for X, where X is the number of defenders. So at the very least, it taps for 1 because it's in play. But it normally taps from 2 to 4. And once again, more ramp. A Defender draws you a card. Imagine that. I like drawing cards. Crashing Drawbridge, Defender. Creatures you can draw gain haste. As I mentioned earlier, this reunion of the house, if you bring your whole table back for 7 and they think your shields are down and you cast that and then tap your Drawbridge and you give them haste, you're about to crush them. It's going to win you the game. And even if this is one of them in your graveyard, you can spend 2, give it haste, and then tap it to activate the rest and give everything else haste. And just GG's. This one's just a fun one. It's an 010, just a big butt guy. It used to be pretty expensive. It was reprinted in this pre-con, so now it's down to like 50 cents. Jotted offshoot, a little bit of life gain. It's got a landfall, gains your life, kind of cool, and it's a defender. So yeah. Nyx Fleece, 05, big butt, gains your life. Like I said, there's this really weird just sub big butt defender life gain sub theme that happened to be baked into the deck, so I kind of bolstered it a little bit and leaned into it. Defender Mana Dork, look at that, taps for green for each creature you control with defenders, so at the very least it taps for 1, but similar to Axebane Guardian, taps for 2 to 4. He has Defender. It's got 0/4. Whenever a creature you control with defender blocks, you may gain 2 life. This is just a method that I bolstered the life game sub theme. And an 0/4 for 1 is pretty great. Stalwart Shield Bearers, 0/3 Defender for 2. Whenever our other creatures you control with Defender get +0/+2, so it makes their big butts bigger. It Kardashians them a little bit. Takes something that was already kind of big and let's pretend it was that big the whole time. 0/3 Defender Hexproof, taps for 1 mana of any color. Like I said, there was also a weird hexproof sub-theme baked into the pre-con, so let's bolster it. Let's lean into it. Tower Defense is a funny one. So 0/2 instant. Creatures you control get +0/+5. Could I put this into the protection package? Most definitely. Is it on theme? Most definitely. The other neat part about it is it giving them reach is pretty cool because at least in my play group, we have a lot of folks that have, well, I'm just going to say it's Jason. Jason runs a lot of spirit tokens and he loves them and that's cool. But man, those flyers can get through and they could be trouble. moving to the next, there's the parrot trees. We have the Tree of Redemption and Tree of Perdition. Tree of Redemption came in the pre-con, so it's $1. It's an O13. It has Defender. Exchange your life total with this creature's toughness. I'm not going to lie. When I first put this deck together, I transposed these two cards so many times. So I will say from a player perspective, make sure you know which one's which, because you might think you have a really cutesy combat trick and you got the wrong tree in play. Just remember which one you got. The green one is your life. The black one hurts your opponent. Exchange target opponent's life with this creature's toughness. This was reprinted in the pre-con. It's $1. This one wasn't, and it's $20. So, yeah, it was reprinted recently in Innistrad Remastered, but with this pre-con hitting and this more or less needing to be in it, it jumped its price back up. Anytime you can tap and set your opponent's life total to 13 if they're at 40, and then go ahead and activate Felothar and draw 40 because now its toughness is whatever your opponent's was. It's gross. It's a very gross card, and to me, it justifies its price point. We talked about Redemption, Vine Trellis, 04 Defender for 2, and it's a mana dork. So yeah, we cut back on a lot of mana. 03 Defender for 1, 2 mana. Until end of turn, target creature with Defender gains haste, can attack as though it didn't have Defender, assigns combat damage as though it's equal to its toughness. You can activate it only as sorcery. It's pretty good. It's helped me win a game a couple times when I casted 2 or 3 walls, 2 or 3 defenders, brought them out there, and had enough to activate them to give them haste. Something else that's cool is he has defenders, so it doesn't say target other creature you control, so he can give himself haste. Happy Robot. Wall of Blossom draws you a card. Wall of Omen draws you a card. Wall of Reverence, Defender Flyer, 1/6. At the beginning of your end step, you may gain a life. You may gain life equal to the power of target creature you control. Normally only gains you 1, but if you have Beltor out there, it's gaining you 5. If you have Dramoka out there, it's gaining you 5. There's a handful of other things. Even if it's just gaining 2, that's great. Wall of Reverence, not the best card, but it's a flying defender. It's got a 6 butt on it, and it gains you a little bit of life, which further enables Beltor. Well of Roots, 05. Put a -1 counter on it to get a green. You can activate only once each turn. So it's a slow roll life gain. Going to the stats specifically, the costs are primarily white and green, a little bit of black in there. Production is more or less even across the board just because I run fetches and shocks. I run both of the basic fetches. I run all of the shocks and the applicable tri-lands. I run all of the fast land and the battle bond lands. So mana cost has never been a problem in this deck. Not to mention a ton of mana dorks in here. And although some of them tap for exclusively green, not all of them do. Some of them are any color. If we look at the curve, 6 1s, 23 2s, 13 3s, and then we kind of taper off 1 6 1 7. So yeah, those are my big dragons, and they do work, you know. We go through the white spell curve. The green spell curve is more so where I lean into, that's my mana dorks, you know, and these are my mana rocks. So I don't have a lot of turn 1 plays, but I do have a lot of turn 2 plays. How I ended up with this little maybe board and what it ended up being, I traditionally build my decks using this method. I start with the pre-con, and then I pick what the deck's trying to do, and then I just scryfall, and I pick things that I like based upon what I have and what's in the pre-con, and adjust accordingly. And before I started doing this, I cracked open EDH Rec, which it's such an invaluable resource, and not everybody knows most of the cards. Not everybody has a Ryan in their group. Ryan knows just cards, so I'll send him lists, and he's like, "Oh, try this, and they lean into EDH rec, and between myself and Ryan and my play group, we forgot Shield Spear, 0 mana for an 0/6, and it's a wall, so it has Defender. If it blocks assign damage, you put a -0/-1 counter on it, so it slowly gets smaller, but it's a 0 mana wall. So yeah, this should have been in this deck, and I spaced it, and it made me laugh even more because it's from Alliances. Like, that's my era of Magic, but I forgot it. So I ordered that. I ordered the Reliquary Tower, and ordered this Ancient Adamantoise. I'm going to pretend that's how you say it, and hopefully I'm right. The 20 butt, I'm not sure that will make the cut for the deck. If it does, I'm going to have to cut something big. And yeah, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to cut to put an 8-drop in there, but it's a great card, and it's at least worth play testing. Overall, this deck, like I said, punches way above its weight. It is not a cheap deck at the $450 mark. The salt score comes in under the median, so it's less salty than most of the Big Buck Matters deck, and I think that's primarily because I don't run any of the game changers, and those are your salt inducers. But it's a blast to play. It holds its own. I played against random people, and it played very strong. And if you happen to have the handful of cards that make this expensive, which I can just more or less I can point at, fixing the mana base is going to make it expensive. Trouble in Pairs is going to make it expensive, and the Tree of Perdition is going to make it expensive. Beyond that, let's see. Flawless Maneuver is a bit more than you'd think. Chroma's Will is a bit more than you think. And a couple of these ramp cards, Nature's Lore is the cheap version of 3 visits, but mana base and 10 cards makes this thing expensive. And if you're okay with a slower mana base, if your play group just plays pre-con level mana bases, you could bring the cost of this deck down pretty dramatically. My play group does not, and heck, some of my play group runs OG duels, and I just don't, because I don't want the strangers that I happen to interact with get the bad feels that, oh, you won because your deck is so expensive. You're running original duels, you're running game changers. But if you wanted to juice it up to the next level, yeah, rock out the full mana base correctly, throw in some game changers. What kind of game changers are they looking at in this deck? Seedborn came in the pre-con, so that one's not going to cost you anything. I actually took it out to preclude having extra game changers. Teferi's Protection, amazing card, just another layer of protection. Smothering Tithe is great ramp, but like I said, this deck has a ton of ramp in it already. Aura Shards. Aura Shards would be a game changer that just the repeatable removal that Aura Shards brings to the table is just disgusting, especially when you're looking at whenever a creature enters. And creature categories, if I bump this back to type, I'm running 32 creatures and a recursion package. Sometimes that recursion package brings back a ton of creatures. So Aura Shards would be disgustingly powerful in this deck. But if you are wanting to crank it up a notch, these 3, obviously, auto includes. I would drop Seedborn for all 3 of these to keep it at the 3 game changers if you wanted to do the bracket 3. And if you're running bracket 4, do whatever you want. You know, you run every tutor, run everything that you want. This is a blast to play. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech. I know I haven't done one in a while, and as a positive aspect, my schedule is changing quite a bit in the near future, so I should be able to make a lot more videos, and I hope you enjoy them. I hope you appreciated the little bits that I've been able to pop in the interim, like cracking a Final Fantasy pack. Let me know down below what kind of cool Final Fantasy cards you got. If you have a big butts deck, most definitely if there's a card that I've missed that you are like, you're an idiot, Rob. You should have included X or Y, and this is why. It synergizes with these other 3 cards, and it's just the perfect card for this deck. I would love to hear that, because anytime I can upgrade a deck that gives universal synergies, it just brings me joy. Hope you're having a great day, and be nice to one another out there. I'm Rob. This is Bion MTG. Good luck and have fun.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below.